I'm going to begin, and thank you all for coming here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Roy Kaufman. I'm Managing Director of New Ventures at Copyright Clearance Center. So some of you can see this, and as the moderator, I'm not doing slides, I just have one prop. So in 1995, at a conference, Jan Velterop from Academic Press presented a paper, and I've heard this paper mentioned in passing a few times at prior STM meetings. But I want to read a few sentences, and I apologize for those of you who know this paper by heart, and I will keep it short as to what I'm going to read. The paper begins, "Scientific journal publishing differs markedly from other kinds of publishing. Born out of the exchange of letters on scientific topics and results, it has evolved into as much a service to scientists who need to publish the results of their work as a service to those who need to be kept abreast of scientific developments elsewhere. Unlike most other publishing, scientific journal publishing has as much to do with the proper recording of scientific activity as with the conveyance of information." The paper continues on sort of the most quoted part. "Scientists, libraries, and publishers share a responsibility to protect and safeguard this elegant system of, quote, keeping the minutes of science," end quote. "Collapse of this system is something science can ill afford, even though in the future it is quite possible that new systems will arise and eventually be standardized and become globally accepted." So, with that as background, and as the first panel in a meeting devoted to stewardship of knowledge, I wanted to sort of talk about this concept of stewardship of knowledge. The program committee, when we first met to come up with what are we going to talk about, we were talking about things like, new trends, and of course with me there, I wanted to talk about copyright and everything else. And then we decided to sort of step back a little bit and think about, as much as I do love copyright licensing, and as much as you might love semantic enrichment or maintaining production schedules, those are what we do every day, but that's not why we do it. Those are means to an end. And the end is the stewardship of knowledge. And I tend to think of this, sure, there's been knowledge as long as, for a very long time since cave paintings and the like, but I think of our branch of stewardship of knowledge as something that started in the mid-17th century with Journal of Discavans and Philosophical Transactions. And I think of us as marathon runners. So for a couple hundred years, people were running with this baton, and at some point, each of us was handed a baton. And in best normal circumstance, we're going to run with this for 30 to 40 years if we have a good run in this industry, maybe a little longer if we have a great run, maybe a little shorter if we get bored. But this is where we're going, and which leads me to this poster which I recently bought. It's a little bit blurry because I just snapped this with the iPhone. This is an advertisement for a subscription journal published in the 19th century from my hometown of New York by a very large scientific publisher at the time by the name of Fowler and Wells. And they were really one of the preeminent publishers of phrenological journals, books, treatises, and they also sold those little ceramic busts so you can really figure it all out. So why am I showing you this? I look at this poster now, and especially what you can't see, on one side there's a picture of a fox, and on the other side there's a guy and it says Foxy. And I think it meant something different at the time. That's right up there. And, I look at that, and we all look at it now and say, ha, 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 look at this pseudoscience. But they were a serious, or what passed as a serious scientific publisher. And in fact, there are many publishers in the room who, well, they were publishing these. You guys were publishing science as well. Maybe in competition with them. Maybe thinking maybe we should jump on this phrenology bandwagon. I don't know. But, Wiley, AAAS, Nature, American Chemical Society, let's assume none of you were actually thinking about publishing phrenology. But this was someone competing with dollars for you. They don't exist anymore because their pseudoscience, which they would have viewed as science, was replaced by something that we recognize as real science. But recognizing that at the time was probably a lot harder. So as we go forth and have a discussion amongst our panelists, I just want to keep in mind you don't always know what's real and what isn't. And, you're also left with, my last point from that same article by Jan Velterop, which is a proposition that says, if not properly published, scientific results are fairly useless because usually indistinguishable from speculation. So I want us to think about how we, for our 30 to 40 years or whatever, that we're holding the baton, how we're going to pass that on and have something to pass on so that we can advance knowledge, whether it's scientific, I know I sounded very science-oriented, but I mean social science as well as science. So, why are we here in publishing? What are we trying to accomplish? And how are we going to move this forward? We've got a great panel. I have been following instructions. I'm not going to read lengthy introductions for anyone. They're all here. They're all very prominent people. You may know some of them. They represent some of the constituencies of stewardship, but there are obviously many, many constituencies of stewardship, and we couldn't put them all on the panel. We're going to lead our talk with Professor Mario Biagioli, who unfortunately for a personal reason wasn't able to come here in person but has Skyped in. Because of how hard it is to do Skype and a panel, we've decided he'll do his presentation, but will not be here for the panel questions. He's not here, and I'm just going to do a shameless plug for him because I love this book that he co-edited called Scientific Authorship, Credit and Intellectual Property in Science. And if anyone has not read this but who's interested in this topic, it's a collection of essays, and it's sort of an academic really looking at what we do, really looking at the nuts and bolts of our publishing practices and things that we don't realize other people are looking at. So I just wanted to give one shameless plug for that book. That will be my only shameless plug, and now I'm going to turn it over to Mario. Thank you very much.